Officer Shaw Parker sought a brief respite in his favorite coffee shop after a grueling day. The warm lights and the aroma of freshly brewed coffee and crispy bacon always brought him a sense of calm. Upon entering, he greeted the waitress, Carla, with a wave of his hand. "Hey, Carla! The usual?" asked Carla, a middle-aged woman with a welcoming smile. "Yes, please, Carla. I need a good cup of coffee today," replied Shaw, sinking into his usual seat by the window. He observed the atmosphere of the coffee shop while waiting for his order. The same faces as always, Mr. Martinez reading his newspaper in the corner, Linda and Sarah, the two inseparable friends, chatting animatedly, and old Tom, lost in his thoughts with his cup of tea. For Shaw, these moments of tranquility were a necessary respite from the harsh reality of his work. As he looked around, his eyes stopped at a table near the entrance. A burly man, frowning and raising his voice, was arguing heatedly on the phone. Next to him, a small boy, no more than 4 years old, stared at the floor, visibly uncomfortable and scared. Shaw noticed the contrast between the man's fury and the boy's fragility. "Here you go, Shaw," Carla said, interrupting his thoughts as she placed a steaming cup of coffee on the table. "Thanks, Carla," he replied, but his attention was still focused on the boy. The little boy looked up, and his eyes met Shaw's. There was something in those eyes, a mixture of fear and despair, that made Shaw's heart race. The boy, with timid steps, got up from his seat and slowly approached Shaw's table. "Hi, champ," Shaw said softly, trying not to scare him. The boy, in a barely audible whisper, said, "Please, sir, help me. My mommy is in danger." The boy's words echoed in Shaw's mind like an alarm. He looked at the man, who was still engrossed in his call, and then back at the boy. "What's your name?" Shaw asked, keeping his voice calm. "Billy," the boy replied, his voice trembling. "Billy, I need you to sit here with me for a moment, okay?" Shaw pointed to the chair across from him. Billy nodded and sat down, looking nervously at his father. Shaw took out his radio and called for backup, briefly detailing the situation. He knew he had to act quickly, but also cautiously. He didn't want to provoke a violent reaction from the man before support arrived. "Everything will be okay, Billy. I'm going to help your mommy," Shaw assured him, trying to calm him down. The man, noticing that Billy was not by his side, abruptly hung up the phone and got up from his seat, looking around until his eyes fell on Shaw and Billy. "Hey, what are you doing with my son?" the man yelled, his face flushed with fury. Shaw rose slowly, raising a hand in a calming gesture. "I'm Officer Shaw Parker. Billy told me his mother is in danger. I just want to make sure everything is okay." "That's none of your business," the man growled, taking a step forward. "It is my business if a child asks for help," Shaw replied firmly. "Please calm down and wait for my partners to arrive." The tension in the coffee shop was palpable. Customers looked on nervously, some even getting up to move away from the scene. Carla, behind the counter, stood frozen, her eyes wide. The sound of sirens broke the calm of the coffee shop as 2 patrol cars pulled up outside. Shaw felt a momentary relief, but he knew the situation was far from over. He looked at Bruce, whose face was turning increasingly red with anger at seeing Billy sitting next to him. "Give me back my son!" Bruce shouted, advancing toward Shaw with clenched fists. Shaw stood his ground, raising a hand to signal Bruce to stop. "Sir, I need you to calm down and listen to me. Billy told me his mother is in danger. I just want to make sure everyone is safe." "That's a lie! This cop is trying to kidnap my son!" Bruce yelled, trying to advance again. The officers stepped between Bruce and Shaw, one of them placing a hand on Bruce's shoulder to stop his advance. "Sir, we need you to calm down and let us do our job," the officer said firmly. We're going to investigate this properly." Bruce struggled against the officer's grip, his fury clearly visible in his eyes. Shaw watched carefully, noting the aggression in each of Bruce's movements. All of this only reinforced his suspicions that something was very wrong. "You can't take my son!" Bruce shouted again, his voice trembling with rage. "No one is taking your son. We just want to make sure he is safe," Shaw replied calmly, although inside he felt the urgency to act quickly. The officers began to handcuff Bruce, who continued to resist. Finally, with effort, they managed to secure him and escort him out of the coffee shop. The atmosphere in the place relaxed somewhat, although the nervous murmurs of the customers persisted. Shaw bent down to Billy's level, who was still trembling, clearly affected by the confrontation. "Billy, can you tell me what happened to your mommy?" Shaw asked softly, trying not to scare the boy further. Billy nodded slowly, his eyes filled with tears. Daddy hurt her. She was bleeding when we left home," Billy said, his voice barely audible. Shaw's heart sank as he heard the boy's words. He knew they couldn't waste another second. "Let's go to your house, Billy. Let's make sure your mommy is okay," Shaw said with determination. As they walked toward the patrol car, Shaw radioed to inform emergency services of the situation and request an ambulance. He knew every minute counted, and that Lila's life depended on their speed. Billy clung to Shaw's hand as they exited the coffee shop. The officers kept Bruce in one of the patrol cars, and Shaw felt a twinge of satisfaction seeing him restrained, but also a great responsibility for what was to come. The road to Billy's house seemed endless. Shaw drove as fast as legally allowed while trying to remain calm so as not to further frighten the child. The journey was marked by silence, broken only by the sound of the engine and the sirens in the distance. Officer Shaw Parker drove quickly through the streets, Billy sitting in the passenger seat, fastened with his seatbelt. The patrol car's lights reflected off the buildings, creating dancing shadows that seemed to move to the frantic rhythm of their hearts. "Are you okay, Billy?" Shaw asked, glancing quickly at the boy. Billy nodded, although his eyes showed a mixture of fear and worry. His little fingers fiddled nervously with the hem of his shirt. "My mom was bleeding. A lot of blood," Billy said softly, as if saying it out loud might make it more real. "We're going to help her, Billy. We'll be there soon," Shaw replied, trying to sound reassuring even as anxiety welled up inside him. The journey seemed to take forever. Each red light seemed to last an eternity, and each crosswalk was filled with people oblivious to the urgency of their mission. Shaw gripped the steering wheel tightly, focusing on staying calm and getting there as quickly as possible. Finally, they turned onto Billy's street. The house was in sight, a small structure that looked normal from the outside. Shaw parked the patrol car and got out quickly, opening the passenger door to help Billy out. "Stay close to me, Billy," Shaw said as they approached the house. The door was ajar. Shaw pushed it open gently and entered, calling Lila's name. "Lila, are you here? It's Officer Parker." His voice echoed in the silence of the house. Billy clung to his leg, his eyes filled with fear. They advanced toward the living room, where Shaw saw a figure on the floor. It was Lila. She was unconscious with a bleeding head wound. Shaw felt a knot in his stomach, but he knew he had to act fast. "Billy, stay here for a moment," Shaw instructed as he knelt beside Lila. He quickly checked her vital signs and applied pressure to the wound to try to stop the bleeding. He took out his radio and called for an urgent ambulance, providing the address and describing the situation. "We need an ambulance now. Unconscious female. Possible head injury. Heavy bleeding," he said in a firm voice, though his heart was pounding. Billy watched silently, his eyes wide and frightened. Shaw looked at him and smiled warmly, trying to convey some calm. "Your mum is going to be okay, Billy. Help is on its way," he assured him. The minutes seemed to stretch into eternity. Shaw continued to apply pressure to the wound, keeping a close eye on Lila. Finally, he heard the approaching sirens. The paramedics rushed in and took control of the situation. "She's unconscious. Head trauma, weak but stable pulse," Shaw reported as the paramedics began to attend to Lila. They loaded her onto a stretcher and quickly carried her to the ambulance. Shaw turned to Billy, who was watching everything with tear-filled eyes. "We're going to follow them to the hospital, Billy. Your mum will be well taken care of," Shaw said, helping the boy back into the patrol car. With emergency lights flashing, Shaw followed the ambulance to the hospital. During the drive, Billy remained silent, his mind clearly in a whirlwind of emotions. They arrived at the hospital and Shaw parked near the emergency entrance. He helped Billy out and they headed for the front desk. "This is Billy's mother. She needs immediate medical attention," Shaw explained to the receptionist, who quickly called for a doctor. Shaw and Billy sat in the waiting room, a cold, sterile place that only amplified the anxiety of the moment. Shaw placed a comforting hand on Billy's shoulder. "Your mum is in good hands. The doctors here are the best," Shaw said, though he himself struggled to remain calm. Billy nodded but said nothing. His eyes were fixed on the door through which they had taken his mother, waiting for any news. Finally, a doctor came out and approached them. "We have stabilized her. She is in critical condition, but she is receiving the care she needs," the doctor said. Billy threw himself into Shaw's arms, finally allowing his emotions to surface. Shaw hugged him, feeling the weight of responsibility and the hope that Lila would recover. "We're going to stay here until we can see her, Billy. You're not alone in this," Shaw said softly. The hospital continued its routine, but for Shaw and Billy, time seemed to have stopped. Lila opened her eyes slowly, the beeping of the medical monitors and the smell of disinfectant bringing her back to reality. She was in a hospital room, surrounded by machines monitoring her vital signs. The pain in her head was intense, but she felt relieved to see Billy sitting next to her bed, holding her hand. "Mummy, you're awake," Billy said, his voice trembling but filled with relief. Layla squeezed her son's hand gently, trying to smile despite the pain. Across the room, Shaw watched silently, allowing them this moment of reconnection before approaching. "Layla, I'm Officer Shaw Parker. Billy and I brought you here. Do you feel strong enough to talk?" he asked gently. Layla nodded slightly, although the simple movement sent a jolt of pain through her. "Thank you. Thank you for taking care of Billy," she replied, her voice barely a whisper. "Can you tell me what happened?" Shaw asked, leaning a little closer to hear her better. Layla took a deep breath, summoning the courage to relive the events that had led her to this place. "Bruce wasn't always like this. When we got married, he was a loving and attentive man. He worked hard, but he always made time for us. Everything changed when he was promoted to partner in his law firm. With his success came distance. He started staying late at work, traveling constantly. At first, I thought it was just the pressure of the new position, but then I found out the truth." Layla paused, looking at Billy before continuing. "He started coming home late, with excuses that were less and less convincing. Then I found out he was having an affair with his secretary. I confronted him and he denied everything, saying I was paranoid. But I knew the truth. I hired a private investigator and he showed me the pictures, the proof of his infidelity. It was devastating." Shaw listened intently, Layla's every word filling in the gaps in the story he had begun to unravel. I tried to save our marriage for Billy, but Bruce just became more aggressive. One night, after an argument, he hit me. It was the first time, and I knew it wouldn't be the last. I decided I had to protect Billy, so I filed for a restraining order. I thought that would keep us safe, but he didn't stop. Lila continued, her voice breaking as she recalled those moments. Bruce started stalking us, showing up at places we used to go. He violated the restraining order several times. The night of the attack, he broke into our house. He was yelling that he would never let me take Billy away. He beat me until I lost consciousness. I don't know how I found the strength to tell Billy to get help, but thank God he did. Shaw felt a mixture of admiration and compassion for the woman before him. She had endured so much, and yet her main concern had always been her son's safety. Layla, I'm so sorry for what you've had to go through. You're safe now, and Bruce is in custody. We're going to make sure he pays for what he's done to you, Shaw said with determination. Thank you, officer. I just want Billy to be safe. I can't bear the thought of Bruce hurting him. Layla replied, tears streaming down her cheeks. Billy hugged his mother, feeling the relief of being together again. Shaw looked at the scene, feeling a renewed determination to protect them. We're going to need your testimony to make sure Bruce gets the justice he deserves. I know it's going to be difficult, but I'll be with you every step of the way, Shaw assured her. Layla nodded, knowing that facing Bruce again would be one of the hardest things she'd ever have to do. But looking at Billy, she knew she had to be brave for him. The following days were a whirlwind of medical appointments and police statements. Layla told her story in detail, providing the evidence and testimonies needed to strengthen the case against Bruce. Shaw's determination to bring Bruce to justice intensified with each detail he uncovered. He was determined to leave no stone unturned. He knew that Layla and Billy's lives depended on Bruce being jailed for his crimes. Back at his desk, surrounded by files and notes, Shaw began to map out Bruce's life. The first step was to speak with Bruce's colleagues at the law firm. Shaw set up a meeting with some of them, seeking to understand more about his character and behavior at work. Seated in an elegant conference room, Shaw watched as the lawyers' faces tensed at the mention of Bruce's name. He was always ambitious, ruthless even, commented one of the partners, a man with graying hair and a piercing gaze. He didn't hesitate to use questionable tactics to win cases. At first, we thought he was just a good lawyer, but then the rumors started. What kind of rumors? Shaw asked, making a note in his notebook. There was talk of witness tampering, of pressuring his colleagues to lie. I even heard he threatened a couple of clients who wanted to pull out of cases he was handling, replied the partner, looking at Shaw seriously. Shaw continued his investigation, interviewing more colleagues and friends of Bruce's. Each conversation revealed a new layer of his dark character. A former secretary who had worked closely with him told him about the atmosphere of fear that Bruce had created in the office. He was always angry, yelling and threatening anyone who didn't meet his expectations, she said, her hands trembling slightly as she recalled it. I'm not surprised it came to this. Shaw knew he needed strong evidence to present a solid case. He requested phone records, emails, and any other documentation that could link Bruce to the allegations of manipulation and abuse. He spent hours reviewing hundreds of pages, looking for patterns and connections. Meanwhile, he also interviewed members of Bruce's family, trying to uncover any clues to his behavior at home. His mother, an elderly woman with a face etched with worry, provided a painful glimpse into the man her son had become. Bruce was always a difficult child, but I thought he would change over time. His father also had a strong temper, and that affected him a lot, she said, with tears in her eyes. But I never imagined he would become so cruel. Shaw compiled all the statements and evidence, building a case that clearly showed Bruce's trajectory from an ambitious young man to a controlling and abusive man. Each piece of the puzzle fit together, painting a chilling picture of manipulation and violence. He knew that Bruce, being an experienced lawyer, would use any technicality to try to escape justice. Therefore, every detail had to be meticulously documented and presented. Shaw also collaborated with a team of behavioral experts who helped him better understand the psychology behind Bruce's actions. They wanted to ensure the jury understood the gravity of his crimes and the danger he posed to Lila and Billy. The final phase of the investigation involved preparing the witnesses for trial. Shaw knew that their testimony would be crucial to securing a conviction. He worked tirelessly to ensure that each witness was ready to face the defense's questions and stand firm in their statement. Finally, the day of the trial arrived. Shaw felt a mixture of nervousness and determination as he walked to the courthouse. He knew that all the hard work and dedication of the past few months were about to be put to the test. Inside the courtroom, he watched Bruce sitting with his lawyers, his expression cold and calculating. But Shaw also saw Lila and Billy, and he felt a renewed determination. He was ready to fight for them, to make sure that the truth prevailed and that Bruce paid for his crimes. The courtroom was filled with a tense atmosphere, thick with anticipation. The wooden benches creaked under the weight of expectation, and the murmur of whispered conversations died down the moment the judge entered the room. Shaw Parker, sitting next to Lila and Billy, observed Bruce with a mixture of determination and disdain. This was the moment they had been waiting for, the chance to face the man who had caused so much pain. The judge banged his gavel, and the room fell silent. The prosecutor rose, laying out the case against Bruce with a clarity and precision that spoke to months of preparation. The evidence gathered by Shaw and his team was broken down piece by piece, each one building a devastating picture of manipulation and abuse. "We call Lila Hernandez to the stand," the prosecutor announced. Lila took a deep breath and stood, walking with firm steps toward the witness stand. Shaw could see the tension in her shoulders, but also her bravery. It was time to tell her story. "Ms. Hernandez, can you describe your relationship with the defendant?" the prosecutor asked. Lila nodded, taking a moment to gather her thoughts. "Bruce and I met 10 years ago. At first, he was a kind and loving man. We got married and everything seemed perfect. But after he was promoted in his firm, things changed. He started staying late at work, becoming more distant. Then I found out he was having an affair with his secretary. When I confronted him, he denied everything and started getting aggressive." Lila paused, her voice trembling but firm. The prosecutor guided her through the events, from the first time Bruce hit her to the night of the attack. Each detail was like a dagger, piercing the heavy air of the courtroom. The jury members listened intently, their expressions shifting between disbelief and shock. "Can you describe what happened on the night of March 14th? The prosecutor continued. "Bruce broke into our house. He was furious, yelling that he would never let me take Billy away. He beat me until I lost consciousness. The next thing I remember is waking up in the hospital," Lila said, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. The room remained silent, the weight of her testimony echoing in every corner. The prosecutor nodded, satisfied with the force of her words, and sat down. The defense attorney rose, adjusting his tie as he approached Lila. "Miss Hernandez, is it possible that you are exaggerating the events of that night? After all, Bruce is a respected man in the community," he said, his tone smooth but insinuating. No, I'm not exaggerating. Everything I've said is the truth, Layla replied, her firmness cutting through the air. Could it be that you have some motive to lie, perhaps to gain an advantage in a custody battle? The attorney continued, trying to sow doubt. Layla looked him straight in the eye. My only motive is to protect my son and make sure the truth comes out. The defense attorney tried several more approaches, but Layla stood firm, her testimony unwavering. Finally, the attorney retreated, having achieved little to discredit her account. The prosecutor called several more witnesses, each providing more evidence and details that solidified the case against Bruce. Colleagues, friends, and family testified to his manipulative and abusive behavior, painting a clear picture of his true nature. Bruce, when he took the stand, tried to portray himself as the victim of a smear campaign. His words were calculated, his emotions controlled, but the contrast with the sincere and emotional testimonies of Layla and the other witnesses was evident. I never did any of the things I'm accused of. My wife has manipulated this situation to her advantage, Bruce said, trying to maintain his composure. But the jury, observing his demeanor and comparing it to the evidence presented, seemed less and less convinced. The prosecutor, in his closing statement, summarized the case with an eloquence that left an indelible mark on the minds of the jurors. What we have heard here is a story of abuse, manipulation, and courage. Ms. Hernandez has shown incredible strength in confronting her abuser. I ask you to consider all the evidence and deliver justice, not only for her, but also for her son, Billy, the prosecutor said, his voice ringing out in the courtroom. The judge gave the final instructions to the jury, and they retired to deliberate. Shaw, sitting next to Layla and Billy, felt the tension in the air, the weight unbearable. The courtroom was filled with a hushed expectancy as the judge prepared to deliver the verdict. Shaw watched Bruce, whose cold, contemptuous expression hadn't changed throughout the trial. In Layla and Billy's eyes, however, there was a mixture of relief and tension. This moment would mark the beginning of a new chapter in their lives. In the case of the state versus Bruce Hernandez, the court sentences you to a term of 20 years in prison. The judge announced, his gavel slamming down to seal the decision. A sigh of relief swept through the courtroom. Shaw glanced at Layla, who let out a choked sob as she hugged Billy tightly. Justice had finally prevailed, and Bruce, the man who had caused so much pain, was receiving his deserved punishment. Bruce was escorted out of the courtroom by the officers, his hate-filled gaze fixed on Layla and Shaw. But Shaw didn't look away. He knew it was crucial for Bruce to understand that he no longer held any power over them. It's over, Shaw murmured, placing a comforting hand on Layla's shoulder. Now you can begin to heal. Layla nodded, her eyes filled with tears of relief and gratitude. Layla's healing process was slow and painful. The physical wounds, though severe, began to heal over time and with proper medical attention. The emotional scars, however, ran deep and would require more time and patience. Shaw remained by her side every step of the way. He coordinated therapy sessions for Layla and Billy, making sure they both received the psychological support needed to overcome the trauma. Layla's house, once a place of fear, was remodeled to create a safer and more welcoming environment. I know this is hard, but it's a new beginning, Shaw told Layla one day as they supervised repairs to the house. I know, and I don't know how to thank you for everything you've done for us, Layla replied, her eyes shining with gratitude. You don't have to thank me. I just want you and Billy to be safe and happy, Shaw said sincerely. Shaw's constant support was a fundamental pillar for Layla. In every therapy session, every sleepless night, and every moment of doubt, he was there, providing the stability and security she so desperately needed. Billy also began to show signs of recovery. Although he still had occasional nightmares and lingering fears, the constant presence of his mother and Shaw helped him feel more secure. Slowly, the boy who had been so scared and withdrawn began to smile and play again. "Mummy, do you think everything will ever be normal again?" Billy asked one night as he snuggled up to Layla on the couch. "Yes, honey. With time, everything will be okay again. And we'll always have Shaw to help us," Layla replied, gently stroking her son's hair. The trial and Bruce's sentencing had left an indelible mark on their lives, but they had also given them the opportunity to rebuild and find peace. Shaw, more than a protector, had become part of their family, and his unwavering commitment to ensuring their well-being was a beacon of hope in their darkest days. Every day was a step toward a life free from fear and full of possibilities. Shaw, watching from a distance, knew his mission was far from over. But seeing Billy's smile and the determination in Layla's eyes, he felt confident they were on the right track. Justice had been served, and now, together, they could look forward to a brighter, more secure future. The morning sun streamed softly through the windows of Layla and Billy's new home, filling the cozy living room with light. Shaw visited often, bringing with him not only his support, but also a sense of normalcy that they all craved. His relationship with Layla and Billy had evolved from being their protector to becoming a close and trusted friend. "Good morning, Layla," Shaw said one morning, entering with a box of donuts and a smile on his face. "I thought we could all enjoy breakfast together." "Sure," Billy exclaimed, running toward him with enthusiasm. "Did you bring the chocolate ones?" "Of course, Billy. I knew you'd love them," Shaw replied, handing him the box. Layla watched the scene with a smile. Seeing Billy so happy and carefree was a constant reminder of how far they had come. But she also knew that the road to recovery was still ongoing, filled with daily challenges. One of the biggest challenges for Layla was learning to trust again. Bruce's betrayal and abuse had left a deep mark on her ability to trust others, even herself. "Sometimes I feel like I'll never be the same again," Layla confessed one afternoon during one of her therapy sessions. The therapist, a kind and understanding woman, looked at her with empathy. "Healing takes time, Layla. It's a process, and every little step counts. The important thing is that you're working on it and allowing yourself to feel and express your emotions," she replied gently. The therapy sessions became a fundamental part of their lives. There, Layla learned to face her fears, process her pain, and rebuild her self-esteem. Billy also attended therapy, where he gradually began to talk about his experiences and fears. "Mom, I talked about Dad in my session today," Billy said one night, snuggling up to her on the couch. "You did? How did it feel to talk about that?" Layla asked, gently stroking his hair. "I felt a little sad, but I also felt better after talking about it," Billy replied, looking at her with his big eyes. "I'm so proud of you, honey. It's important to talk about how we feel," Layla said, hugging him tightly. Neighbors and friends rallied around them, offering support in the form of visits, prepared meals, or simply a kind word. Gradually, Layla began to feel part of a strong and loving support network. "I don't know how to thank everyone," Layla said one day at a community gathering. "Your support has meant the world to us." "You don't have to thank us for anything, Layla. We're all here to help each other," replied a neighbor, giving her a warm hug. Shaw, for his part, continued to be a constant presence. His visits were always welcome, and his relationship with Layla grew deeper each day. Through their shared moments, from family dinners to walks in the park, Shaw became a pillar of strength in their lives. "Sure. I don't know how we would have gotten through all of this without you," Layla said one evening as they sat on the porch watching Billy play in the yard. "I just want you and Billy to be safe and happy. Seeing you both like this is all the thanks I need," Shaw replied, looking at Layla sincerely. Small victories were celebrated with great enthusiasm. The first time Billy slept through the night without nightmares, the time Layla went for a walk alone in the neighborhood without feeling afraid, or the day they both laughed until they cried while watching a movie. Each of these moments was another step toward a normal, happy life, a life they had thought impossible for so long. Shaw sat on the porch of Layla's house, watching Billy run around the yard, chasing a kite that soared through the air. The setting sun bathed the landscape in a golden light, creating a scene of peace that stood in stark contrast to the tumultuous events of recent months. He reflected on everything they had been through. He remembered that first day in the coffee shop, the fear in Billy's eyes, Layla's desperation. It had been a difficult journey, filled with moments of doubt and pain, but also of courage and determination. Each step had strengthened the bond between them, creating a connection that now seemed indestructible. Layla came out of the house with a tray of lemonade, smiling as she saw Shaw lost in thought. "What are you thinking about, Shaw?" she asked, offering him a glass. "About everything we've been through, how things have changed since we first met," Shaw replied, accepting the lemonade with a smile. "It's been a long road, but I couldn't have done it without you," Layla said, sitting down next to him. "You've been our rock. And you've taught me more than you know. Your courage, your ability to overcome adversity. You've inspired me deeply," Shaw said, looking at Layla sincerely. Billy ran towards them, his laughter filling the air. "Mom, Shaw, look how high my kite is flying," he exclaimed excitedly, his eyes shining with joy. "You're doing great, Billy," Shaw replied, feeling a surge of pride. As time went on, Layla and Billy continued to take steps towards a future full of hope. Billy had started to excel in school, his teachers praising his intelligence and resilience. Layla, for her part, had found a job she was passionate about, surrounded by people who supported and valued her. "I never thought we'd get to this point," Layla confessed one night as they ate dinner together at the kitchen table. "But here we are, stronger than ever." "And the best is yet to come," Shaw said, raising his glass in a toast. One afternoon, as they were walking in the park, Shaw stopped and looked at Layla and Billy. The connection between them was evident, a bond forged through pain and perseverance, but also through love and hope. "Layla, Billy, I want you to know that I'll always be here for you. No matter what happens, we're family," Shaw said, his voice thick with emotion. "We know, Shaw, and we'll always be here for you too," Layla replied, taking his hand. Time continued its course, and with it came new beginnings and opportunities. Layla and Billy embarked on a journey of rediscovery and growth, while Shaw continued to support them every step of the way. So, life wasn't always easy, but together they faced each challenge with renewed strength. Shaw looked around and felt a deep sense of gratitude. Billy was asleep in his lap, exhausted but happy, and Layla was smiling, her eyes reflecting the light of the fire. Thank you for joining us on this emotional story of courage, resilience, and hope. We have witnessed how Layla and Billy, with the tireless help of Officer Shaw, managed to overcome unimaginable adversity and rebuild their lives with strength and determination. Their story is a powerful reminder that, no matter how dark the times, there is always light at the end of the tunnel. If this story has touched your heart, Don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel so you don't miss any of our upcoming inspiring stories. Share this video with your friends and family so they too can witness the incredible power of the human spirit. Until next time, and let's continue to build a better world together. Don't forget to activate the notification bell to be aware of our new videos. See you soon.